Okay, so this is going to be a video to show how to set up Nuxt with Ionic using this Ionic plugin, Tailwind using this Tailwind plugin, and Supabase. This will just be a original setup video. There seemed to be a lot of interest when I posted this on Twitter. We will see if we get the same amount of interest on this video, and if so, I'll just push deeper. The idea here is a starter template. So let's, first of all, thanks for stopping by the channel. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and let's get to it. So let's start off with building a Nuxt app, and we could say npx nuxtc. We'll take the latest init my Ionic Tailwind Supabase. And let this run. Yes. And now let's cd my npm install. I'll worry about those issues later, but everything should be able to run fine. And let's do Ionic next. And straightforward, let's npm install -d at nuxtjs /ionic. We're really just going to use Ionic for its components. We'll mix and match with the UI components as needed. I found playing with this that sometimes it's best to use the Ionic component and then style it with Tailwind versus just using a regular HTML component and styling it with Tailwind. You get some benefit from the components that is extremely helpful when creating your app. So that's Nuxt. So that's Ionic. Let's install Tailwind. And then let's install Supabase. And it should be this. Okay, let's open this up in Visual Studio Code. We still have some configuration to do with all of those, so let's pull them over here. Let's zoom this in a bit. Usually is good enough. Same with over here, 1, 2. And now let's go into Nuxt config to add all of our plugins. So let's go back to Ionic and we'll start with Ionic. Let's look at the configuration setup. We need to add the Ionic module. So we'll drop that in here. All right, after we've added the plugin, there's some configuration that we could do. So let's kind of skip down to that. So here with the options, so we could say Ionic, and really what we need is the CSS. We need to be able to include, why is my types not working properly? Let me run this. And let's open this up over here before we go any further, just to make sure everything's working. Localhost 2000. And we have our getting started. And now let's go back to our Nuxt config. And so for CSS here, we definitely want utilities because there's some good stuff there. And let's go back. What else? The integrations. Default to true, PWA is true, router true, disable configure default is true. We are going to let Nuxt handle our routing, so we can leave it to default, and we're going to let Nuxt, they'll preload our icons for us. We want the utilities. We won't take any of the core CSS. And I think that's all we need now. And let's, just to get this going, let's get an Ionic page in here. So when you use Ionic and they're handling the routing, you don't need this app view at all. So let's just, for now, I just rename it. And what we'll do is we'll create a pages directory. And in here, we'll just create an Index.vue. And this will be our home page. And then just so that we're familiar with the Ionic style, everything has to be in a page. So Ion page. And then a page has an Ion header. And then there's an Ion title. Index page, and then the content for a page appears in an Ion content. And then inside of here, you can pretty much do whatever you want, right? And so here's where we'll use the Tailwind styling. So let's see, pages public, app view. Let's go back to my home page. And why is it doing this? Oh, I forgot this. What am I doing? I'm in Vue. So this is a template. And then wrap this in template. Oh. And now, oh, sorry, this is Ion header. Ion toolbar. You can see also how it already gives us in VS Code. We can see the IntelliSense for the necessary Ionic components. So now I have my basic index page in, and let's do, just so we can understand the flow. So let's do an about.vue. The About page is pretty much the exact same. So for now, we're just going to copy this template. We'll go over here to About. We'll drop this in. We'll say About. One of the things that's cool is Ionic will manage the navigation stack for you. And so if we want our back button in our About page, we could just go Ion buttons. We want this to be in this front, so we say slot, and the slot is start. And then inside of here, we say Ion back button. And that will render us our back button that we want when we navigate to the page. Ion buttons, Ion start. What did I do? Ion back button. Yeah, I'm getting the stamp styling thing messed up here. Let me just do this manually. Ion back button. All right, so now we can, since it's just file-based routing, I can say About. All right, so I'm on my About page. Let's go back, and we want to show our back button. So inside of here, we will just create Ion button. So we want to show the use of the button. So here we can add our Ion button. We could say About page. And our click. And then there's a couple of ways you can do it. If you're going to keep the Ion button in here, you could just say router link. About. Where is Ion button? Save. All right, why isn't my button showing? Ion page, Ion header, Ion content, Ion button, About page, Ion button. Oh, I added this to my About page. Oh, it looks like I've added this to my About page. This should be on my index page. So let's take this out. Let's go back to our index and drop it in here inside of Ion content. So we have our About page. And just to show you the utilities, so class, the utility in the CSS is, so I have Ion padding. Ionic has a whole set of CSS utilities that you have access to. I'll include a link in the video description. So now I can click and, extra code in there. So now I can click and I can go to my About page, and why didn't it put my slot in the right place? Slot, I had buttons, About page, go back. Why is it Ion? That is, oh, the buttons, I believe, let's see, do they belong inside the toolbar? Yes, the buttons belong inside the toolbar, my bad. So now we have our arrow. Also, this will be, with Ionic, this will be platform specific. So if I go in here and look in my tools, and we can see this says that if I refresh, so now if I refresh and it's an iPhone, you can see I'm getting the iPhone style. I click on the About page, you can see we get the back button like you would expect from from Apple. And if I switch my device to an Android device and refresh everything, you can see I'm getting the Android looking UI and the back button that you expect from Android. So that's one of the niceties that you get out of using Ionic Framework as the foundation for your style of your application. So that's enough for Ionic now. Let's go and add, excuse me, some of the other components that we said we were going to add. So we've added Ionic. So now let's add Tailwind. So we've already done this part. Let's switch this to NPM. Now we need to add the module. So let's just take our Tailwind module, and we'll go back to our Nuxt config, and we will add Tailwind in here. And so now Tailwind gets added, and let's see. When running Nuxt.dev, it'll look for these files, blah, blah, blah. If you're gonna create your own file, make sure you have the Tailwind directive in each one of Tailwind's layers. If they don't exist, the module will inject. All right, so this will set up everything that I need for Tailwind. I believe it sets it up for me automatically. Let's just refresh. Also, nicely, it sets up this Tailwind viewer for you also. So you could kind of see how everything has been set up for you in Tailwind. And then now let's see if I could put some Tailwind in here. So let's go back to my index page, and let's go underneath here, and let's just create a button. And let's put it in a separate div. And, I said button. And let's do class. And so now you can see we have Tailwind in here. So background, green, let's use green 500. And then we do our padding .y.2 pad x 4 and we round our button. Let's round it a little bit more, medium. And so now we have a button styled in Tailwind. And so all of the other, let me get some more room. All of the other Tailwind related stuff you can add to your classes here. As I stated many times before, I'm not a Tailwind expert. Usually I just borrow UI from other Tailwind libraries that I include in my application. But this is to show that you can integrate Tailwind into your application now, and it's in here. Since this is a regular button, I cannot use a router link, but what I can do is just go into my styles, my setup down here. So I just script setup, flags TS, and then in here, const router use router, and then come in here and do my click router dot push about. And we're in with the Tailwind style. So that's Tailwind integrated. I'm looking at my errors down here. And so then the last thing is Nuxt Tailwind. What do I got here? Supabase. So we've already done this part. So let's go to get started. We need to update our configuration. So let's go back to our Nuxt config. Let's put in Supabase. We need to create an environment variable and add these keys. I already have a Supabase project set up that I just use for tests, which I'm integrating. I'll include a link for how to set up Supabase, how to set up a Supabase project itself. The Supabase documentation is pretty great. So let me create my environment file. .env. And then I need to add these keys. So let's just copy this. And now I will kind of pause the video, put my own keys in here. So I've added my keys to the .env file. Let me restart my application. My application is starting up. So the next thing that we want to do, let's see what they got here. So options, URL, blah, 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 blah. They have a demo app here that shows you how to integrate it. I'm going to, let's see, how could we show that we have Supabase integrated? Well, one of the important things when you're integrating Supabase is that you're going to need to manage your authenticated user. So what we will do is let's add a login page, login.vue, and we need some middleware to check that the user is authenticated. Middleware, and let's put this folder where it belongs. And then we'll have an auth middleware auth.ts that we will add that will check the status of the user. And if let's see, what do we got in the table of contents? Well, we could just quickly take a look at where's this demo source? I have the source. I thought I saw it here. So we're going to demo, we'll go to source code in the demo directory, and we'll just kind of borrow from what they have. So here's the middleware. So we have the middleware, and then on success, we'll navigate back to our index page. And then let's see what they have. Do they have a login screen at all? Let's go pages. So you just got this weird connect with thing. We're not going to use any of that. So we're just going to rip all this out and I think I have a login page lying around somewhere. We'll drop in Index.vue auth slides. All right, so I've just pasted in some sample code for a login page that I've created already. As you can see, I've mixed in the Ionic page, because we need the Ionic page. Everything needs to be sitting inside of Ionic page, and for it to be styled properly, the page content needs to be inside of Ion content. And so that's what we have here. And then you can see I've integrated some Tailwind. I'm capturing the email with this credentials.email object, password, credentials.password object, and then I have my sign-in button. Inside my setup, I've defined my page meta, saying this page, I set the alias to login. And then here I'm leveraging the Supabase composables that have been provided to us. And so this will give me the SupabaseUser. This gives me the Supabase authentication client. This is getting me the router. What's happening is that since you're using the Ionic router, pages stay in memory. I mean, pages stay in the DOM. They are always there no matter what. And so there's a couple of things that I'm doing. What I'm doing here in this Ion view did enter. I will, let's see, once you enter the page, I will check to see if you have a user. If you don't have a user, if you have a user, then I redirect you to the index page, which is the start of the app. So let me put that back in there. Otherwise, I just let you into the page. And then what I do is I turn off, I basically cancel this watch when you leave the page. Otherwise, this watch is just constantly there running, and it will send the application in a crazy loop. So that's what's going on here, there. This is my reference that I've created to hold my credentials, my email, and my password. This is my sign-in function. Off of the auth object that I've off the auth object that I've gotten from the composable, from the Supabase client, from the Supabase module, I can get access to these calls. So one of the things you notice, I don't have to create this client file. I can just use these composables and they give me access to what I need to leverage Supabase. And then what I'm doing here is I'm making my call, taking the credentials. If I have an error, I throw an error. If I don't have an error, then I reroute back to my index page, which is just at /, and I return true. Otherwise, I display an alert with my error message. And that is all we have here on this page. So let's save this and let's refresh. And why does this thing, oh, that's left over from the, actually, you want to know what? Let's go back to my index view. And we're going to do the same thing we've done in this login view, and we are going to do a DefinePageMeta. Go back to my index view, and we'll go to the top here, and we'll define this as index. No, index. Index, and there you go. So now it's found the index page. And so let's go to my login page. So my login, so I must already have a user. So to confirm what I believe that I have a user is right here on my login page. Let's create another div down here and use our Supabase. So we'll say use our Supabase hooks, not hooks, I'm mixing React. Supabase Composable, so I can say user, and then say use Supabase user. And that gives me this user object. And then what we'll do is down here in this new div, I will just display the user. So we'll say user.email. And what is this complaining? The user might be null, so we'll just use the Elvis. And there we go. So it looks like I have already logged in before. So let's switch our Tailwind button to a logout button. So where's this? This is a logout user. And then we won't push to about, we'll call a function, do user log out, and then come down here and add another function, do user log out. And for that, we can leverage the auths. And so we can say const and I believe it is useSupabase auth client. And then auth. Oh. That's the client, but I want the actual auth object. So now I can say auth sign out. And that should sign me out. Let's refresh. I'm on my page, log out user. The user is logged out, but I didn't put my middleware on here. So what I need to do is I need to define, so remember the middleware, remember this auth middleware that I created? I need to call this on my index page and my about page so that if I don't have a user, if there's no user, this is incorrect. If there's no user, then here I want to navigate to login. So now there's no user, and this is what my middleware will do, but I need to call my middleware in my index file and my about file. And the way you do that is you say middleware, and then you create an array of middleware to call. At this point, I only have one. So I just call auth, and let's add this to my about page also. About, and we'll add our script section. And let's get this right. This is setup, laying TypeScript, and we don't need, we're not going to define an alias. It's pretty straightforward, but we do want our middleware for auth. So I have no user set it, so it sent me to my login page. This is my login page that I styled. And then now when I sign in, it redirects me back to my index page. And then now when I log out, why is my log out? So, because I'm not redirecting on my log out. So let's go back to my index page. And on my log out, we're going to say router.replace, and we're going to send it back to the index page. Not to the index page, the login page. Login page. So now I'm on our login page. The other thing that we want to make sure works, so if I sign in, I'm here, so I know I'm authenticated. I still have my user object. So as you can see, when I refresh my page, it is recognizing that I already have a user object, and it's bringing me to the appropriate page, as opposed to just bringing me back to the login page. So even if I do an empty cache and a hard refresh, I still have my user. If I log out my user, refresh, try to get to one of those pages, so let's change about. It can't get to the about page, so I don't have a user, so it just brings me back here into my sign-in page. And that is about where I'm going to stop for now. So what we covered was we showed how to get Ionic components in. Oh, we have to do one last thing. We need to deploy this app to a device. These instructions here walk you through how to do it manually. I strongly encourage you, if you're using Visual Studio Code, to leverage this Ionic extension that you get with Visual Studio Code. It makes this a lot simpler for you. As you can see, if I open this guy up, you just click Add Capacitor Integration. So it's added capacitor. Since I'm running on a Mac for now, I will just add, you go down here, I will add iOS to my project. So now iOS has been added to the project. So it's added this capacitor configuration. And so the important thing to note is that what's going to happen is the output from the build is not going to be in this www directory. It actually is going to, we can just run it to see where the output goes. So let me go back to my package.json. There's a couple of things that I found to make this work successfully. One, for the Ionic build, you don't want to do a build. You want to run this generate. And the generate will create an output public directory, I believe. Let's see. Actually, we could run it to see. And the last thing that you need to do is you need to make sure you go inside of your Nuxt config. Where's my Nuxt config? And what's going on here? Oh, there we go. And you want to set SSR to false. This is the configuration that I found that works best. So now when I go to my Ionic and I click build, okay, see, so it's trying to copy the assets from the to www. That does not exist. As you can see, I want the data that is in, let's see where dist goes. It looks like I want what's in dist. So I just go into my, where is it? I go into my capacitor config and the web directory is the dist directory. That's where the web content is that I want to display in my application. So now that that's set, let's go back to Ionic. Let's run my build. Nuxt generates the HTML files that I need. You can see here's all the HTML that I need. It puts it in output public. But if you look here, output public is alias to dist. So if I go here and say output public, this is the exact same code. And it has the index that I want, which is required. And then now the next step is to just go back to your Ionic plugin and click iOS. I'm going to run on my 14 Pro Max. And where is my simulator? There it goes. There's my Xcode build. And here's my app launching. And what was that user? Aaron at mail. It looks like it wasn't that, and I'm not showing my errors. So let me go back to my web. Aaron at mail. Aaron mail. I thought my password was just password. I try to keep it simple. So let's try again. Aaron at mail.com. So I found out what the issue is. So This useSupabaseUser is a reactive variable that gets updated. The problem is it doesn't get updated in time for my middleware to detect that I have an authenticated user. So the recommended solution, which I found, there's a GitHub issue posted, which I'll include the link inside the document description. It says to get the auth client and then get the user from the auth client. So that's what I've done. So now I'm getting the user from the auth client. Let's rebuild the application. Application is rebuilding, it's launching. And so now let's log out. Let's add a user. .com, .password. And we sign in, and so we're running into the same problem here. I'm authenticated now, but it's not showing my user from my useSupabaseUser. So if I go back to my index page, where is my index page? And is that my index page? My user. I'm going to do this. And what I want is data.user. And then we can use that up there inside the template. So let's take this. Let's add this to my template. So let's make sure I have data. And if I have an error, if error alert will display an error message. All right, now let's rebuild everything. Let's go back to Ionic, rebuild. And so you notice it recognized that there was already a user, and it just brought me back into the application with the authenticated user, which you can see right there. So now we can log out. Let's log in again. Sign in, and we have our user. So I'm going to wrap it there. I definitely wanted to go through and show you some of the gotchas around using the Supabase client. Hope you found this helpful. So once again, I will check this code into GitHub. I will post the references to all the changes that I made to get it to work appropriately. But this is a template that you could use to build on and do other interesting things. I will add some more to this template. So for example, right now we're not showing using tabs or a drawer or kind of any other common user interface that you would want to leverage that you get from Ionic. And so we could easily integrate all of those into here. And so maybe we'll do that in the next video, along with doing a deeper dive on Supabase and a deeper dive on Tailwind integration. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this. Please leave comments below. Let me know if this is something that you found helpful. Thank you, and bye.